Hello and welcome to another episode of the Testing Peers. Tonight we are asking the question, what is test leadership? We're joined by two of the usual crew and a familiar face. Is that David?
Hello.
Russell?
Hello.
And Shey?
Hey, how's it going?
And I'm Simon. Before we start, we are delighted that Saffron QA continue to sponsor the podcast. Saffron QA is a specialist in testing recruitment, offering permanent contract and a newly developed retained recruitment service. More details can be found in the show notes, or please reach out to Ben directly to find out more. And taking the part of Mr. Bantz tonight is Shey.
Hey, everyone. Right. So I've got to remember how this goes, right? We're talking about test leadership tonight. So the opener is, if you could meet any leader in history, who would you want to meet and why?
Wow, that's tough.
That's a big one.
I know. I mean, there's a lot of history to choose from, right?
Dropped a mic and walked off.
Yeah, it could be Caesar at 2, but probably not. You probably didn't know much about testing,
because it doesn't have to be political, does it? It can be.
No, there are many great leaders. There are also many great leaders you want to just walk up and give a slap to. Hey,
I was thinking a few of those as well. Tony
Yeah,
Blair did spring to mind, but of all the people that I wasn't going to waste it on the slap.
So yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, I've put that out there, and I've gone, well, I don't even know who I'd go for. I mean, I'm quite a fan of a lot of the quotes and sayings of Winston Churchill. I think of his time, he was an incredible leader, and he did what he had to do for the country at the time. There's some criticisms for him, but would he be the guy that I want to go and chat to and say, hey, let's have a beer, bro, and let's talk about leadership? Probably not.
So for me, my first instinct was Nelson Mandela. I think that he would be. He seemed such a nice, genuine guy for all the hardship they went to, and I'd quite like to have a conversation with him, because I think that I would have probably learned a lot from him.
Yeah, I would have said Nelson Mandela as well. I mean, the other option that comes to my head, and I've read both of his books, or two of his books that have been really inspirational for me, would be Barack Obama. Because again, maybe not to the same level as Mandela, but there was definitely sort of some level of adversity there that he's sort of shown that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And he made some very sort of strong and bold decisions and what have you during his time in power. So yeah, for me, if I can't choose Mandela, I would have chosen Barack Obama.
Interesting style of leaders we're choosing, I'm thinking, because mine would be Gandhi. Similar thing, though. It's just about inclusion. It's about kind of freedom. It's about kind of, I guess, pacifist in a way, kind of working towards that, kind of opening the worlds up and doing it in a way that empowered people.
Wow, really, really interesting. And you're talking about adversity there as well, and people overcoming adversity. I mean, mine's not necessarily that. I think I'd love to hang out with Neil Armstrong. What a guy. One of my favorite podcasts that I listen to is 13 Minutes to the Moon, which is the last 13 minutes of the Apollo landing. And this guy, he had to free fly something that had never been tested that close to the moon in that way before, to land on the moon, and but also showed amazing leadership and courage. So that for me is somebody I'd love to meet. And a tester. Hey, he was a test pilot straight out of the box.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds like one hell of a dinner
Test in
party.
production.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Rock and roll. Let's get stuck in, guys.
Cool. So I mean, we've obviously talked about testing quite a lot on this podcast, and we've had a dabble in leadership topics as well. But when you bring them both together, what do we mean by test leadership? Where do we want to start?
Beginning.
Don't all rush at once.
How do you get into test leadership? I'll do a little drawing from my 9 out of 10 testers stuff. I'll do a quick little story time about how I got into test leadership, and maybe that we can riff from there. What do you reckon?
Yeah, sounds good. Go for it.
Okay, so 24 years ago, I started. I got asked to do some computer games testing to help out a mate, and I bust a gut. And 3 months later, 3 months into my career, my first job, like serious job out of failed university, I got made a leader. I got made a test lead, thrown in there, and no help, no nothing, and just went, right, you're leader of these 3 guys. Now, there's no help, no nothing. So what I did was I basically mimicked the leaders that I saw around me. My test lead, or the leader of the QA lead in the computer games company I was in, and he was a little bit of a tyrant. So I was a bit of a tyrant. So I just got chucked in. Looking back, not the greatest way to do it, but I spent a lot of my career just continuing to do that, mimic the leaders around me to try and find my way, find my journey. And I think thankfully I didn't muck up too many people's careers, but it's not the greatest way to start, is it? Just being chucked in and left to see if you can sink or swim.
I think there are 2 different types of test leadership, actually. There's exactly as Shey's done, and what I've done is sort of line management of people and inspiring testers and helping train them and coach them. However, there is the sort of test leadership of processes and the sort of management of the actual test itself, and what they're actually doing, which doesn't actually necessarily have to have a direct line management as part of that. So there are 2 different types of test leadership that we could actually discuss in this podcast.
I would say there's actually 3.
Ooh.
Because I also think there's the thought leadership side of testing as well. There's the people that speak out to talk about the industry and trying to bring others on that journey that aren't necessarily in their direct line management or process management within their company. They're trying to make the world a better place in the testing world. And you class that, I mean, maybe that's wider than just test leadership, but in the context of what they're sharing and talking about, that could be seen as another form of leadership. And that links probably in some ways closer to the icons we mentioned in the banter of how they portrayed leadership. It was all about the bluster of what they were putting outwards rather than the internal cogs that they were building on the inside.
I think it's interesting because obviously we talked about 3 things. I think there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think there's hundreds of them. Because it comes back down to what do you define as leadership?
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
We didn't say that. To me, there is line management sort of leadership, where you're actually told you're in charge of people, but there's ones where actually you're followed. No one actually has to, but you're leading them because you're the person they look up to for guidance. And there's formal, informal, semi-formal ways of doing that, mentorship, training. There's lots of different models. And I guess when we talk about it in test leadership, we're talking about, I guess, that broad spectrum. We're not probably really, unless we want to right now, defining one way is the right way. I think when we talk about leadership, it is obviously about other people. I think that's the point, and how you as an individual interact with other people, be it as a line manager, a visionary, a thought leader, all these different things. Test leadership is the people in testing who, I guess, have some sort of following for whatever reason. And I guess we should delve into those reasons. We should try and understand them. Maybe to line up our stories, as Shey already has.
Yeah, I think what's very clear is, and a nod to Chris, given he's not with us tonight on this podcast.
He's dead to us.
He's forgotten already. Is it is very context specific. You can be a test leader in one place and then you move to another place and you're not quite. You could still be leading in some form, but it may not be the same level of test leadership you had before. It may be different.
Can be a job title. It doesn't have to be. That's the
absolutely,
thing, yeah.
Exactly that. And that's the other key thing that we can talk about is leadership doesn't mean you have to have the manager or lead job title. You can be a leader without having the word in your title. And that, I think that's a crucial part as well.
I think that's really important for people in their careers as they come through, is to understand that you don't necessarily have to have the word lead in your title to be able to start on your leadership journey. And one of the things I always call it as a journey, because, you know, it's one of those things you never reach the apex, but you're walking a long road. And, you know, Russell said about followers and things like that. There's a fantastic YouTube video, which is was shown on the Institute in Leadership and Management course that I went on, which was this guy dancing in the middle of the field. And then as soon as he got his first follower, all of a sudden, loads of other people joined him on dance.
Video. Yeah,
it's fantastic, and you know, it's stuck with me forever. And you know, I hope maybe in the show notes you guys can link to it, because it's such an example of leadership. You can be out there and dangling it all about, but until you have somebody who's there with you on the same journey as you, you're not a leader. But that guy standing in the middle of the field, he didn't have leaders. You know, wasn't above his head. I'm a lead. People followed him because he had a great idea. And, you know, it's one of those things of, like, in the workplace, if you've got something that you're passionate about and somebody else is passionate about, all of a sudden you may find yourself as the leader of that passion. And you can be aware of, if you're aware of that, then you can bring people along with you and make actual changes.
I think you've highlighted a really key point, but I also think that each individual has to live by or recognize their own values and live by them all the time. And once you are settled in what you feel you're capable of or what you believe in, as long as you live by those values, then you can start to influence. And a bit like the test leadership is, it's starting that influence, you know, getting people on board, not and holding up to those values, and calling out people that don't live to those values if they're accepted values. Because then people, if you hold those convictions and, you know, can stand by them and justify them, then actually people will start to listen and hopefully respect you for that. And it's part of that respect that then people will then go, all right, okay, that's quite a good thing to say. I would also say that also choose your words. Don't be all the don't be too showboaty and full of words. You know, we've all known people who spout them off and just love the sound of their own voices and just talk and talk and talk. And you lose the point of what they're saying in the noise. The best leaders are the ones that think about what they say and then justify what they say. And I love people in meetings where they, not the noisy ones, but the quiet ones, who can just, in a sentence, summarize what people have been waffling on for 25 minutes and succinctly say it. And you then believe them, because actually they've assessed everything that's happened and summarized it very simply. And they're the people to actually listen to, because actually they have a better understanding than the people with all the noise.
I think for me, you've hit on the number one skill for a good leader. It's not about not communicating yourself. It's about that active listening, being able to listen to what's being said to you, being able to understand it, digest it, and come up with a like you say, a succinct way of articulating it, or being able to action it in a way that, you know, you've taken everyone's thoughts into account when you step forward. And that's, you know, that's where the testing bit comes in as well. You know, to be a good tester, sometimes it's about actively listening and digesting information. So that's where, you know, test leadership can come together in some ways.
I think it's interesting that, because I worry a little bit about us assuming what characteristics, and there's a pattern a little bit about what good leaders are, because I think there's something about being able to cut through waffle to kind of get to the point. I think there's something good about that. But the mechanism that people get there, some people can be ones that draw on whiteboards, some people can be the quiet listeners. We should be careful about kind of, I guess, typecasting certain things too much. It's ultimately the outcome that we care about. The mechanisms to get to the outcomes can vary by different leadership styles, but it is making sure that there is that clear message at the end. There is that clarity, because people don't follow waffle. They do follow a clear instruction. So it's clear about getting there, but everyone has a different process to get there, I think.
I think you're right. I think there's also something around, it's not necessarily about getting things done, it's about how you get there as well, how you bring people on that journey and how you make them feel and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're right.
Empowering social enterprise, getting people involved in the activity. It's not a top down necessarily in my world. It's trying to get people involved. Those sorts of things. I was just thinking before, when we picked some of the leaders we were talking about at the very start, a lot of those people didn't start off as leaders. They started off as individuals with a passion, with a care, with a drive, something that mattered to them. And that led them to become leaders. If you see what I mean, they became people looked up to them in their communities, and it grew and grew. And some became presidents, prime ministers. Led independence, changed the entire political system in South Africa. Huge things happened from these people, but they just started with a purpose, a goal, and the way they communicate, the way they engaged with people started following them. And it's interesting how often leaders are kind of created, I guess, versus just given a title. The best ones I know had a journey versus just became an MP last week, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you know what? We all chose people from quite a while ago, and nobody said, "Oh,
have you seen the current political situation?"
Well, no, look, I'm not getting into politics. I'm talking about leaders who inspire us, and there are. If we thought hard enough, we could probably find some current leaders who we'd sort of go, okay, this is cool. Again, not talking about politics. There's that whole sort of nowadays there's so many sort of websites about how to become a leader, or 10 ways to be a better leader, or I get up at 5 a.m. in the morning and that makes me a leader kind of junk. Whole journey these people came through. Mandela, what a journey. Obama, what a journey. Gandhi, well, famously, what a bloody journey. And Neil Armstrong left the bloody planet. That's a journey and a half. All jokes aside, these people came up. None of these guys sort of woke up and went, you know what I want to be today? I want to be a leader. There's none of that sort of tomorrow I'm going to lead a country. It is that kind of they started on a journey, they had an idea, and then all of a sudden there was somebody behind them going, mate, I've got you. Let's do this together. Sort of circling back around, it's how do we inspire somebody to become a leader? How do we bring somebody who may not even know they've got leadership in them? How do we bring somebody into this fold, onto this journey that we're all on? It's a crazy one, isn't it?
Very good question. So I guess it's, as other leaders out there, other people recognizing the people that we see as leaders. So people that you see lead others in their thought process, their actions, people that take a lead voice in a meeting, like David said before, the people that cut through kind of the circles that people go around to the point, and that other people respect and listen up to. And I guess helping find a platform, helping encourage that platform, helping enable them to have their voice heard, and to have that influence, and to see it in themselves, to have the confidence that comes from that as well, because it is confidence. A lot of people I know are leaders, have imposter syndrome massively. They don't feel that they know. And it's obviously us as other people, not necessarily leaders, but as just people, being able to articulate to them, share their impact they're having to us, why we follow, why we listen, so that actually that can build their confidence, their skills. We can tell what worked, what didn't, like waffling Russell right now.
I have to say that's one of the biggest learnings in my leadership journey, was that the majority of other people in leadership positions also have imposter syndrome, and also have it badly, and to the point where it can be quite crippling. And for a while, I had it. There's an incredible podcast episode by Matthew Said about alter egos, where famously Rafa Nadal has his alter ego that he has to put on before he gets onto the court. Beyonce had Sasha Fierce, who was her alter ego to allow her to get on stage. I I'm not putting myself in the same group as these people, but when I first started networking at the London Tester Gathering, I had to put on an alter ego to be able to just walk through the door, to be Shey, the networker, and the leader and things like that. And since then, similar to what Beyonce has talked about in her biographies and stuff, that has become part of me. That networking persona, that persona that I put on, is now part of me. But I tell you what, the imposter syndrome, I didn't realize I had it until I spoke to somebody and they just went, "Oh yeah." And I'm like, God, you're a leader I look up to, and you're like sitting there telling me, like, you're talking to me right now with imposter syndrome, like standing on your shoulder. And I'm like, but you're so sure of yourself. And so, yeah, that's incredible how many leaders just sort of sit there and go, yeah, I'm suffering, bro.
Completely agree.
I think there are a couple of things that come up. I'd like to pick up on Russell's bit, is that respect. As a leader, you need to gain the respect of people around you. And that can come from a variety of different things. So we've mentioned about, listening skills, but also I think it's also knowing or understanding sort of enough about the situation so that as a leader, you don't necessarily need to know all the parts to it. You don't need to know the minute details, but you need to know enough that's going on so that you can empower other people in order to do it. And as that success, as you breed success, then you get that sort of respect from people, and that allows you to then increase your understanding on your leadership, and also because you increase your understanding, actually then gives you a broader picture to have better understanding of what you're actually doing. And the other thing I would say as part of that is being able to empower and allow people to thrive under you, or as part of your leadership strategy, is to give people the ability to question you, to criticize you to a certain extent, or give feedback and you take that on board, because we are all fallible. We all make mistakes, and it's what we do with those mistakes as learning opportunities, rather than just being blasé of I'm always right, because actually there will come a fall, and people will want you to fail potentially if you're always that particular type of person.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think circling back around to the whole thing of test leadership, I think I know we're not in a unique situation, but testing inevitably is always one of those disciplines that we feel isn't very well understood and isn't, seen in the same light as others. So as leaders in that discipline, there is that extra incentive to try and raise the bar and persuade people the importance of what we do and how we do it. So the influencing piece is massive, along with the respect pieces. You have to build that ability to get testing at that table, to get people to understand the importance of testing. And I'll go back to when I first became a test lead. Even before I became a test lead, when I was sort of semi-scrum master, semi-senior tester in the team, it was just that case of being the one that was willing to step up and step the head above the parapet and go, hang on a minute, are you sure you want to do that? Is that the right thing to do? I don't think we should do that. Or no, I'm not happy with that. And suddenly people go, oh, okay, he's I'm going to get behind. Going, yeah, we're behind time, and we're going to continue with that. And then you get the respect and the influence, and it snowballs. And I think that's the kind of thing for a leader. Full stop. It's that first step of putting your head above something and going, hang on a minute, or yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to push this forward, or making the decision that someone else isn't going to make.
You don't become a leader without starting on the leadership journey, in a way, do you? It's important.
Exactly.
And nobody can give you a badge and say, right, well done, you're a leader, because that's not how it works. You kind of have to want it, or you kind of have to be walking that journey. I mean, yeah, want it, maybe not. Some people have leadership thrust upon them, don't they? I think that support thing is very important, though. It's like, if you are watching somebody either inside your organization or within your peer group or extended group of friends, etc., and you see them on that journey, I think it's really important to support them. Because one of the things that I never had earlier on in my leadership journey was any support. So, what I was doing, oh, man, as I said, micromanaging, ranting, trying to, promise it, and I was trying to be the yes guy up and the yes guy down, but in the end, I was satisfying nobody. But until I got a leader who gave me support and just sort of said, "Hey, look, I back you, but also I'll pull you up when I think you're diverting from the main message here." I really was, just in the woods, and having somebody to support you from who's also a leader is really important. I think especially for young leaders, for up and coming leaders.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think there's lots of positives about having that really influential leader that supports you and backs you. I think there's also something to be said for having experienced bad leadership and learning the lessons of what not to do, or having a leader that's riled you up so much that you've actually developed resilience and fight and stuff that you didn't realize you needed, but actually it gives you that grit that enables you to make decisions that are maybe not as popular as you can't always be best friends with everyone around you. You have to have that, and sometimes that grit doesn't come from having the amazing, influential, positive person that you're working for. You get that from living adversity, and we go back to what we talked about with our inspirational leaders at the start. It's never, leadership isn't a single track happy path. It is a very windy road with lots of diversions, lots of chances to go off piste and get lost in the woods and find your way back onto the main road again.
I'd highlight a couple of points there, that actually with leadership, we need to not surround ourselves by yes men or people that won't challenge us. The best leaders surround themselves with people that will be challenged by the people around them. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, sunflower leadership, you don't want people that just look up to them, follow you around, whatever you say. You want to avoid that if you can. Just bring this back towards testing again to a degree. I was just thinking before, we've talked very broadly about leading, and I think that's because it's actually a really broad subject. And obviously in testing, we put that in the topic that we're talking about. And good test leaders, in my head, aren't influencing testing, they're influencing the what we build, the why we build, the how we build. They are kind of the ones that we done another episode about glue work. They're joining things together, they're facilitating. Good leaders aren't just making sure their own title area, domain, all right, they're looking after the people, and they're actually trying to think about the end goal, the purpose of the point in the long run. Now, sometimes you're actually just worrying about the person in front of you. That person doesn't have to be as a test leader, wouldn't have to be a tester. If you see someone who is a developer who's upset, supporting them is just as good at test leadership as is anything else. And it's about, sometimes we put prefixes, domains and areas, and we get siloed, domain specific. We care about our own world only. It's my problem. Some leader somewhere else has said that I must improve testing. Therefore, I will influence the people I'm the leader of directly, but listen to me. And we get caught sometimes in these bubbles of our own making, and not deliberately, accidentally usually. And we need to obviously think that testing is impacted and influenced by all the activities around us, by the requirements, by the customer, by the development practices, by the release practices, by you name it. All these different people, how it's supported, all these things influence it. And leadership is about working across those pieces, not typecasting yourself to one thing. It's about being open, being flexible, influencing where you can, not just within a title that you've been given.
That's a really interesting point, because we're talking about leadership and how we're influencers, but also when you put the word test in front of it, because if we're test leaders, we probably have come up through the testing fraternity, the testing career path, and we are testers. And part of being a tester is kind of being across everything in an organization. If you're, in my opinion, a conscientious tester, you will try and learn outside of just your single track. You'll learn a little bit about the organization. So you get, hey Chris, context, and you get context for the wider organization, and that's important. So yeah, as a test leader, I think that's doubly important, because as a leader, one of the things you are is a filter of information. And so you take the word from God and you bring it down to your team, and you say, hey everybody, this is the way we're going, this is the direction that the higher ups think. But also you take what they're thinking upwards, but also you go outwards as well, don't you? You got to go to the other parts of the organization. I mean, one of the things I found when I was a test lead in an organization a while back was I sat in a meeting and they were like, okay, and I'm summarizing here, it's like, okay, we're going to make all this area of the website purple. And I went, well, that's really cool, and my testers can help you test that you're going to make that purple, but those guys over there are really dead set on making it red, and they've got a whole project that they're in the middle of that they're going to make it red. And this person went, how the hell do you know that? It's like, because it's my job to know the breadth of the organization, so I can best represent you and lead my testers to best represent the organization, or best help the organization. So yeah, as a tester, as a test lead, you have to have that sort of try and get that broader view.
It can be a hard job as a leader, because you're often thrown in, as we said earlier, to a degree. You could be new to the company, new to the area. Because you've shown some promise in doing something, someone then sees the potential and goes, you can handle the next thing. So they throw you into another bundle of fun, I'll call it, to kind of deal with that situation, because you've shown that when it's tough, you'll learn, you'll adapt, you'll take a lead role in the actual outcome. So that means actually other opportunities come your way. And sometimes how leadership roles can snowball, about kind of seeing opportunities, taking them, grasping them. How you tackle these things often ends up defining the leaders. If you seem to solve the problem, if you bring the people on with you, then you'll find that your opportunities are created around you almost. And it sometimes can throw you to a too deeper end. It can sometimes break you. I think that's fair to point out that, we talked about imposter syndrome. Sometimes it's not imposter. Sometimes you have been pushed too far. And it is a very hard skill to know when that happens. And the honest, from the people I know, the first few times they didn't know until afterwards, is the honest answer. They learned from failure. So be careful, I guess. It's good to lead. It's good to take on. It's good to be proactive. Know your limitations. Seek help, I think, is the best one. Speak to your peers. If you don't have peers, try and find some, I think, is the best thing I can probably advise you.
Talk to the community, I would say.
Yeah, there's a wider community out there.
God, seek a mentor. Holy hell.
Well, it doesn't have to be someone in your role. This is the thing. Like, I've had line managers most of my life, they're not testers, but I've always been able to talk to them about the work, the problem. They can't see it from a tester's eye, but they can talk from a personal perspective. And 90% of the time, if not more, that's the support I've needed. Not an expertise, but a people-related experience. So don't worry about that. It will happen. As a leader, you'll have hiccups. I think Shey's experiences at the start, he didn't have the greatest experiences with the way he learned from things. I've had some good leaders, and I've also come across some shockers. And it's shaped, and it does. But seek help, seek advice, even from other people around you, because they can actually make a big difference.
The other thing to call out is, leadership doesn't have a job role as such. Yes, there's test lead roles, there's manager roles, But the other key thing to realize here is when you go onto that leadership path, you are almost starting at entry level again on a different career path. It isn't a case of, oh, you're the best tester in the company, therefore we're going to make you the test lead and you're going to be brilliant at it, because you are looking at a completely different role from day one. You go from being in the weeds, in the detail, knowing how to test everything, to suddenly you're looking after the people. You're expected to look at things strategically. You're thinking about things. You're like you said Russell and Shey. You both say that glue work. That's exactly it. You suddenly become the glue, not just for your team, but for the wider organization in different areas. So it's about understanding that, and that's where imposter syndrome can work in your favor as well. If you start realizing that actually, I am on a new career path now. I might be the best tester, but now I'm starting from fresh. I need to take those skills to help me move forward, but I'm not expecting to be perfect from day one on a leadership journey.
Yeah, and one of the things I haven't had until very recently is somebody who's not officially mentoring me, but someone who I sort of chat with informally, who I'd class as a mentor. And I think if I have one piece of advice to somebody coming into the leadership journey or on their leadership journey and doesn't have it at the moment, is perhaps find someone to chat with on a regular basis about their situation. It's not necessarily about leadership, but find that sort of mentorship kind of area where you're able to just sort of say, hey, look, I had this situation this week with this person, and I'm not sure how to deal with it. It's the old talk to the wall kind of thing. If you talk to the wall, and you probably come up with an answer. If you talk to somebody who's outside of your general circle of influence, you may come up with the answers. So I'd love to have a formal leadership mentor. I must admit, I'd love to have someone who is leadership savvy, who's able to mentor me to be a better leader, because I think that would be something fun and interesting to explore. But just find someone who you're able to confide in and go down that journey together.
I agree with that, and I have had someone this last year to help me with leadership that's actually sitting in a finance team rather than sitting in even in our area, and just being able to talk leadership stuff. And look, resilience has been a big thing, talking about that and understanding that from someone who's not in our bubble, who doesn't get the testing world, doesn't need to get the testing world. Actually, they look at it from a completely different angle, and it's pure leadership discussion, and it's been brilliant. It really has opened my eyes to what makes a good leader. So I absolutely agree with that, Shey. I'd recommend that. So
it is probably time we wrap up. But before we do, I want to say one final thing, because I'm wrapping up. I get the
do we have to?
Well, we do. Otherwise, this could be a 3-hour episode. But mine was, there's one thing I've learned about leadership, and it's something I need to remind myself of from time to time, which is this: you don't have to know everything. You can say you don't know.
Absolutely.
And that it's one of the most important lessons. It took me a long time to learn, was not having an answer. I can talk forever. I can answer everything. Sometimes I need to say I don't know. So that was my final point before we're going to wrap up. Now, I think we've spawned lots of ideas here for future episodes, so you're going to hear more about this, I'm sure. And it's something that's passionate. We're all leaders. We're all passionate about leading people, so you will hear more. But please stay tuned. Listen for future episodes, or go back through our back catalogue. That's also fine. You can reach out to us, contact us at testingpeers.com. You can also find us at LinkedIn, Facebook. I think we're around there. We're definitely on Twitter still, and we're on Patreon. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us.
Mastodon? Bloody hell.
No, we haven't quite gone to Mastodon yet, but I'm sure
Good grief.
It was talked about. It might happen, and I'm not sure if that's actually picked up, and some people have moved off it again already. Anyway, so feel free to reach out. Obviously, watch our back catalogue or listen, because you're watching it might be more of a challenge. So on that bombshell, good night, or good morning,
or evening. For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.